The Great Resignation and quiet quitting were topics of much discussion in the second half of last year. Around the time of the COVID-19 pandemic, this trend began, and a significant number of people quit their jobs. The big quit generated significant criticism, not the least of which was the media reporting, which made it sound like many of these workers had decided to permanently leave the workforce. However, the data indicates that the labor force participation rate, which fell at the start of 2020, actually swiftly recovered. That included people who were almost ready to retire. This indicates that people weren't actually quitting their jobs altogether, but were simply changing them. In many cases, people left occupations that paid well but demanded long hours in favor of jobs that might have paid less but allowed them more control over their lives. In other words, the Great Reshuffle was more prevalent than the Great Resignation. Jill Schlesinger undoubtedly came to that conclusion. Schlesinger works as a business analyst for CBS News and is a licensed financial planner. Additionally, she is the author of the recently released book The Great Money Reset, which is based on her conversations with callers to her personal financial podcast, Jill on Money. The majority of those callers were thinking about making their own big quit, but they were unsure of their ability to carry it out or how to go about doing it. According to Schlesinger, inquiries about changing employment to improve work-life balance aren't unheard of in the personal finance industry, but they increased significantly during the epidemic. She says she feels overwhelmed. And she claims it is only the first of several significant developments that she believes will impact the personal finance industry in the future. People who called her show during the pandemic were looking for more control over their time and work conditions, she explains. Many people came to the conclusion that they wish to work less or differently, have more flexibility in their professions, have less stressful jobs, or change to a new career as a result of time passing and the pandemic's relative calm. They are prepared to make at least some financial sacrifices in order to do so, even though they may not necessarily want to give up life's comforts. According to Schlesinger, the pandemic has changed that since investors are now keenly aware that they might not live to retire, and it would be a good idea to consider how to enjoy part of that money now. Schlesinger asserts that advisors will need to learn more about their clients in order to take that into account when conducting financial planning. Getting into the emotional issues is difficult for many financial planners, according to Schlesinger. The finest planners, who are also the most expensive, consider their customers as complex individuals with a range of requirements and complicated lifestyles. The majority of the financial services sector, however, is designed to treat people as mere widgets with a predetermined life expectancy and a predetermined retirement age. There isn't much room for the human element. Schlesinger claims that even before the epidemic, reputable financial advisors were beginning to reject such strategy. They understand that you cannot simply provide a client a list and say, "Please populate the assets, obligations, revenue, and costs," says Schlesinger. You must actually educate yourself about who they are. And the epidemic, in my opinion, has hastened this trend. The reserve fund is what matters most. Schlesinger claims that prior to the epidemic, she would offer clients some very conventional financial advice. She would begin by outlining the 3 foundational tenets of personal finance. You're just getting started, I would tell folks. Creating an emergency fund, paying off debt, and making an effort to save for retirement are the 3 things you must do. And I frequently gave those considerations equal weight. Naturally, people realize the importance of debt repayment and retirement planning. What is the emergency reserve fund? A harder sale was that. People would yell at me and ask how I could advise them to keep 6 to 12 months of their living expenses in a non-interest-bearing account. Because 0% interest truly applied throughout the pandemic in the early years, says she. But the pandemic highlighted the significance of having some sort of financial safety net. The people I spoke to who had emergency finances, had money they could access, went through the epidemic in a completely different way than people who were relying on stimulus payments and prolonged jobless benefits, the author writes. She continues to promote the 3 pillars now, but believes the emergency fund is receiving considerably more attention. In addition to from her, I believe that since the epidemic, more individuals have realized the need of having an emergency fund and reliable access to funds, which are now priorities 1 through 3, the author says. The most difficult aspect of interactions for the majority of financial planners is discussing the desired outcome. Everyone is happy to talk about retirement all day. After all, they are looking forward to a pleasant time when they may travel, visit family, and complete all the tasks they have postponed for 40 years. But what about addressing what happens to their resources and possessions after death? Before the pandemic, no one was ever interested in discussing that. They already do. Schlesinger laments the fact that he is no longer forced to argue with others to obtain estate planning. The change has been fascinating. According to Schlesinger, COVID-19 made end-of-life issues a priority for many people. One caller told her about a fight over a family business, which she found to be an especially upsetting story. A small business was involved, someone died, and there was no instruction. What are we doing with this business, etc. Mom truly needs the money, but Dad would have rather us keep it. Because the deceased parent did not leave any instructions, a family argument broke out. Probably not what the parents intended for their legacy to be. And definitely not what the bereaved family members wanted to experience. Everyone is familiar with someone who has a horrible estate tale, according to Schlesinger. Positively, those individuals paid attention to such stories. They want to talk about estate planning right now. The difficulty now, according to Schlesinger, is actually persuading her clients to carry out those plans because those are difficult conversations that force people to make difficult decisions. Of course, before the pandemic, it wasn't unusual for people to make significant changes in their lives, but according to Schlesinger, it wasn't particularly frequent. Most folks tried their best to keep to a career path and expected retirement trajectory. Only a few number of life circumstances could typically cause someone to deviate from that course. She claims that the 2 biggest triggers were divorce and death, but the epidemic revealed many more: loneliness, bad job experiences, and mental health. She says, "You're living this very bare, stripped down life, and you're with your thoughts, and you're hearing about terrible things, and it's really scary." She adds that in that situation, many of the choices we had made in an effort to achieve a distant financial goal suddenly didn't seem to make sense. Then you might ask yourself, why do I live so far away from my parents? I don't think I want to work this way anymore. So why have I chosen to work so hard when I'm not even sure I like my job? However, I know I genuinely adore my kids. Even when it seems like the obvious choice, fear is a major obstacle to change. However, in Schlesinger's opinion, the pandemic caused a lot of individuals to change. They had to confront their worries. I was simply overpowered by the sheer quantity of terrified people. But who actually saw an opportunity in the midst of all this chaos once the initial fear subsided? The opportunity I'm referring about is a life opportunity, not a market opportunity. What do I actually think I want to do? Personal finance experts and financial planners, according to her, will need to accept that the epidemic in some strange way made individuals feel like they needed to take control of their life in a more active way and to argue for their more pressing needs and goals. Now you may take a look at your financial goals for retirement, your job objectives, and everything else and ask, what about me? What role does my present-day happiness play in this? Schlesinger is aware of the stakes since she has made significant, audacious changes in her own life in the past, including giving up a lucrative financial planning position to pursue writing, journalism, and podcasting. However, it was a friend of hers named Maureen's experience that really drove home to her the significance of realizing your true reasons for making changes in your life, and how you should react to them. Maureen was diagnosed with a very deadly cancer, had a 4-month agonizing illness, and passed away on November 30th, Schlesinger claims. Everybody experiences a significant incident that changes their lives. Every person does. And you sense the pressure. As I went through that experience with her, I believe that even in myself, my own capacity to comprehend how the decisions we make affect our lives was enhanced. I can tell you that having the capacity to plan ahead and use that to create opportunities for yourself is very advantageous. Wild investment tactics have existed for as long as markets have, but the pandemic was contemporaneous with some of the craziest, such as the rise of meme stocks and the crypto frenzy. Schlesinger believes that the fact that people were imprisoned and given little to do while a lot of money was moving through the system played a significant role in this. Keep in mind that there is a lot of money sloshing around the system. We had trillions of dollars in excess savings that accumulated. Most of those came from the richest, highest net worth individuals, but many of them were knowledge workers who worked from home and received stimulus checks, giving them plenty of free time and a small amount of money in their accounts. According to her, the communities that supported this kind of trading were not new, but they grew significantly during the pandemic, and they are likely to decline once COVID and its variants disappear. However, they persist. And it's all right. Even surfing the occasional meme stock or crypto asset wave while spending some time on your preferred subreddit is acceptable. Only if you act responsibly. Schlesinger asserts, "I don't have a constitutional objection to people taking flyers. Enjoy yourself, but don't jeopardize the farm in the process. Enjoy yourself and say, all right, I invested 5% of my overall portfolio in some wild stuff. Fun, that." To put it another way, personal finance doesn't just have to be about taxes, estate planning, income optimization, and asset allocation. If you choose, it might even be enjoyable. Everyone may agree to the new rule, which is good.